The Guardian did a quick description and said, you claim that the Jewish people bankrolled Hitler, caused the 2008 global financial crisis, and staged the 9/11 terrorist attacks. That's why, some of the reasons they call you an anti-Semite.
Yeah. I say the Jewish people. No, I don't. The Jewish people are a whole community, a whole vast spectrum of belief and perception. But what happens is this. There has been created what I call the anti-Semitism industry, which is a protection racket. And it's not a protection for Jewish people. It's a protection racket to protect the far-right government in Israel from legitimate criticism. And you can see very clearly that it's not about protecting Jewish people, because any Jewish person that criticizes Israel gets the abuse to a greater extent than non-Jewish people do. We've had a situation in recent times when Jewish people have been expelled from the Labour Party for being anti-Semitic. I mean, it's like, it's at the level of saying men and women are not biologically different. It's madness, because it's not to do with protecting Jewish people, clearly not. It's to do with protecting Israel from legitimate criticism. So this is how they work. And you're talking a tiny number of people in the Jewish community, what I call ultra-Zionists, the real extremists. The rest of the community are not involved in this at all. That's why when he says, they say he's saying the Jewish people, I'm not saying the Jewish people at all.
So you're criticizing the ultra-Zionists.
The ultra-Zionists, right, who have no desire to help Jewish people. They have a desire to help an agenda.
Which include the Rothschild family?
Oh yeah,
okay.
all that stuff.
Okay.
So, and people like George Soros, for instance. You know, George Soros is a multi-billionaire financier who has a network called the Open Society Foundations that operate in more than 100 countries and are basically driving this progressive, regressive, political correct agenda and all that goes with it. And yet, and leaked documents, leaked emails have all shown this to be provable fact in countries like Ukraine and many others. But if you, as I do, expose George Soros for what he's doing, you know, he has put so far $32 billion into this Open Society Foundation network. I mean, why is he doing that when you see how it works and what it's doing and what its goals are through what they call NGOs and stuff? So you expose what he's doing, not because he's Jewish, but because of what he's doing. What's the defense mechanism? You're only saying that because he's Jewish. No, I'm saying it because he's what he's doing. I don't care if he's out of Mongolian. I don't care if he's middle class American or middle class whatever. I'm interested in what he's doing. But the protection racket, because that's what it is, then kicks in and says, you're only saying it because he's Jewish. You can't say that, that's anti-Semitic. And this is how the protection racket works. So,
and this is happening in the Labour Party now as well.
Well, I mean, this was the situation. This protection racket had got such influence in the Liberal Democrats and in the Conservative Party, as it has in the Democrats and the Republicans in America, big time. Some people are now starting to point that out in America and getting massive flack for it. And most of the Labour Party was there too. The Blairite Labour Party, it won't have a word said against Israel, no matter how extreme its behavior is towards Palestinians and what have you. But there was a core around Jeremy Corbyn, and that which supported Jeremy Corbyn, that was still willing to criticize Israel. And so the focus was turned on that. And you had this anti-Semitic hysteria, which was generated, the media supported it, but it was generated by groups that are part of this protection racket. And they were targeting people for saying the mildest stuff. And they introduced this new definition of anti-Semitism, which was classic protection racket. Let's put aside the fact that anti-Semitism is a misnomer term and look at a definition of it, a fair definition of it. It's hating or being discriminatory against Jewish people for being Jewish.
Right, which does happen today.
Of course it does. Not on the scale that's claimed, but it absolutely does. And it's reprehensible. Discriminating against anyone on the basis of that background, race, religion, whatever, is the same. But that simple definition didn't serve the protection racket. Why? Because it allowed the criticism of Israel and the extremes of ultra-Zionism. So they introduce a new one. And this new one is frankly ridiculous. And I'm not going to, bow down and say, oh, I mustn't say that. What will they say about me? I don't care what they say about me. It's ridiculous. And when you read it, what it's saying is basically, whatever they claim, this is what it's saying. Any criticism of someone who happens to be Jewish, for almost any reason, is anti-Semitic. Criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. Criticism of Zionism is anti-Semitic. You've had Emmanuel Macron coming out recently and saying criticism of Zionism is anti-Semitic. Zionism's a political philosophy. It's not anti-British to criticize the Conservative Party or the Labour Party. But what they've done is, and this is not Jewish people, this is the protection racket, which is a tiny number of very well-funded organizations, is they've expanded the definition to stop criticism of Israel. Now, what they wanted to do was to have the Labour Party accept this definition. And so they started the campaign of abuse against the Labour Party. Everything was anti-Semitic. Oh, they said they're anti-Semitic.
Completely unjustified, this campaign?
Well, in any group, you'll have some people who are discriminatory against this group or that group. Of course you will. But in terms of the scale they were claiming, it's insane. So what they forced the Labour Party got down on its knees eventually because its backbone went. And they've accepted this definition. So the abuse has got what they want. And now they're expelling people from the Labour Party, including Jewish people, on the basis of this new definition. I mean, how crazy is this? Where you get somebody, this is one example, who was born in Israel, Jewish, serves in the Israeli Defense Forces, took part, I think, in the 1982 war war with Lebanon, and as a conscript, then stayed on and served in, I think it was PR for the Israeli Defense Forces, saw some of the extraordinarily horrific things that are done to Palestinians, and reevaluated his whole way of looking at what was going on, moved to Britain, and then thought, okay, well, what political party can I join where I can express my, what I feel about what's going on? He joined the Labour Party. That man's been expelled for anti-Semitism.